There's an uncomfortable question that almost no one dares to ask themselves. What if most of your life has been built on behaviors that keep you ordinary? Not just financially poor, but mentally ordinary. Because the world loves to sell the idea that intelligence is a diploma, a high IQ, or hours of study. But if that were true, brilliant people wouldn't live trapped in miserable routines, while seemingly normal individuals silently accumulate power, influence, and freedom. Machiavelli understood something that remains frighteningly relevant. The world doesn't necessarily reward the most intelligent. It rewards those who understand true human nature. And perhaps that's exactly why some people always seem to be a few steps ahead, as if they see invisible rules that the rest of the crowd never noticed. While some live reacting emotionally to their environment, others learn to manipulate their environment silently. While some seek approval, others build autonomy. While some spend their lives trying to appear intelligent, others become dangerously difficult to control. And the most unsettling thing is that almost no one realizes what level they're really at. Because there are silent behaviors that separate ordinary individuals from those who develop a strategic, cold, and unmanipulated mind. And when you understand that, you begin to see the world in a way that you may never be able to unsee. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. Most people have spent their entire lives believing an elegant lie. They were told that intelligence meant getting high grades, memorizing formulas, speaking in a sophisticated way, or collecting diplomas on the wall like war trophies. But just observe the real world for 5 minutes to realize something uncomfortable. Many brilliant people on paper are lost in practice. They know how to solve complex equations, but can't negotiate their own salary. They understand philosophy, but don't understand people. They know theories about leadership, but freeze in the face of conflict. And that's where Machiavelli's vision begins to bother people, because he understood something that few schools teach. Real intelligence is not the appearance of intellectual virtue. It's the ability to survive, adapt, and influence hostile environments. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, reveals that the world rewards utility, not just abstract knowledge. The truly intelligent man perceives patterns, while others are still debating opinions. He understands that virtù and fortuna go hand in hand. Preparation meets opportunity. He doesn't depend on collective approval to validate his decisions. And the more he observes real human nature, the more he realizes that there are extremely educated people, but completely manipulable. Because information is not power. Power is leverage. And almost no one learns that early on. The traditional system loves to mold obedient people because obedient people keep structures functioning without questioning. School rewards repetition. University rewards intellectual conformity. Company rewards predictability. And in the midst of all this, many people confuse sophisticated submission with superior intelligence. The young man works 15 hours a day, lives anxiously, answers emails at 2 in the morning, and still believes he is winning at life, when in reality he has become just an efficient piece on a chessboard he doesn't control. Machiavelli spoke of having one's own loyal armies because he understood that excessive dependence always generates vulnerability. The intelligent man seeks autonomy. He learns skills that increase his freedom. He learns communication, negotiation, behavioral reading, sales, strategy, positioning, and decision-making under pressure. A simple example of this appears in everyday life. Two people may earn the same salary, but one knows how to invest, build strategic relationships, and create parallel sources of income, while the other lives trapped by the next paycheck. The difference is not in the diploma. It is in the ability to see beyond the surface. Better to be feared than loved does not mean gratuitous cruelty. It means understanding that respect is born from perceived competence. And most are still trying to appear intelligent instead of becoming intellectually dangerous. There's a quiet moment in life when some people begin to realize they've been trained to survive within systems, but not to understand the game behind them. And this generates a strange discomfort, almost like waking up in the middle of an old dream. The individual begins to notice that the most influential men are rarely the most academic in the room. Many don't even seem like geniuses at first glance, but they possess emotional intelligence, constant adaptability, and a brutal understanding of human nature. They know when to speak, they know when to disappear, they know when to use force and when to use silence. The calculated use of force doesn't only happen in wars or politics. It appears in a negotiation, a promotion, a difficult conversation, or even a simple no said at the right moment. And gradually it becomes clear that there are levels of intelligence that almost no one discusses publicly. Some live sleeping on autopilot, others merely imitate intelligence to receive social validation. Others begin to see the world as pure strategy. And it is precisely there that the true hierarchy begins to appear, because not every awakened mind plays the same game. There's a reason why some people seem to live for decades without truly waking up. They wake up, work, complain, distract their minds, and repeat it all again the next day as if they were characters trapped in an automatic script. This is the first level, the sleeper. He doesn't make his own decisions, he only reacts to environmental stimuli. If the news panics, he panics too. If the crowd runs in one direction, he runs along. He lives by outsourcing thought, opinion, and direction. School taught him what to think, the internet taught him what to feel, and the algorithm decided what he should believe. Machiavelli observed that decisions based on real human nature require a cold perception of reality. But the sleeper avoids reality because it demands responsibility. He prefers emotional security to intellectual freedom. And the problem isn't a lack of ability, it's an excess of anesthesia. He spends years too busy to realize he's being led. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, reveals something cruel. Systems thrive when people remain distracted. And while he believes he is living normally, someone more aware is learning to use their attention, their fear, and their habits as fuel for power. Then comes the second level, the imitator. This one is more dangerous because he sincerely believes he has awakened. He collects books he has never applied, diplomas that serve more as psychological decoration than practical transformation, and sophisticated phrases to impress others. The imitator performs intelligence. He wants to appear profound all the time. And here enters a silent trap that Machiavelli would understand perfectly. The appearance of intellectual virtue can generate social status without generating real competence. The individual learns difficult words, but remains emotionally dependent on external validation. He lives trapped in the Dunning-Kruger effect without realizing it. He knows a little and already feels above average. He's the guy who takes leadership courses but doesn't lead his own routine. He talks about financial freedom while drowning in installments. He posts quotes about discipline at 5 in the morning and spends the rest of the day procrastinating. The problem isn't studying. Studying is essential. The problem is transforming knowledge into aesthetic identity instead of a practical tool. Real intelligence changes behavior, and when that doesn't happen, knowledge becomes just sophisticated makeup for the ego to remain comfortable. Better to be feared than loved is far from the imitator's life, because he still desperately needs to be accepted. At the third level appears the calculator, the fox. Here the mind finally begins to see the world as it truly works. Relationships of interest, hidden incentives, psychological exchanges, and invisible power games. The fox perceives social patterns before others. It learns negotiation, influence, timing, and emotional reading. It no longer easily falls for idealistic discourses because it understands that the end justifies the means in many competitive environments. However, there is a silent price to pay for this strategic awakening. The more it understands human nature, the harder it becomes to genuinely trust people. Everything begins to seem like a transaction. A favor has a hidden intention. A compliment seems like manipulation. A relationship becomes a calculation of emotional benefit. The fox gains efficiency but loses innocence. And many business people, politicians, and behind-the-scenes operators live exactly at this stage. They win externally while carrying paranoia internally. Virtù and Fortuna begin to make sense because they realize that competence without timing does not build any empire. Yet something within them remains incomplete, because seeing the game does not mean mastering the game, and there is a level above that of merely calculating, a level occupied by those who stop simply reacting strategically and begin to assert their presence throughout the entire environment. The fourth level belongs to the operator, the lion. Unlike the fox, who dominates through strategic reading, the lion dominates through presence. When he enters a room, people sense it even before they understand. He acts quickly, takes responsibility, withstands pressure, and doesn't wait for emotional permission to make difficult decisions. Machiavelli said that it's better to be feared than loved when it's not possible to be both, and the lion understands this intuitively. Not because he seeks to intimidate gratuitously, but because he understands that authority is born from visible conviction. He's the type of man who leads teams in crisis, protects his own, and keeps moving forward even when tired. But there's a hidden crack in this archetype. The operator depends excessively on his own energy. He solves everything through brute force, discipline, and mental strength. He becomes a reference for everyone around him, but rarely finds someone he can rest on. Many business leaders live like this, publicly admired and silently exhausted. The calculated use of force begins to consume the user himself, and the more visible he becomes, the more attacks he receives. Because whoever leads through presence inevitably becomes a target. The lion inspires respect, but also awakens envy, competition, and constant attempts at sabotage. Then comes the fifth level, the puppeteer, the invisible puppet that almost no one notices until it's too late. This one doesn't need to go to war directly because he has learned to move people without appearing on the board. While the lion leads through presence, the puppeteer leads through the psychological architecture of the environment. He understands human fears, desires, insecurities, and needs with almost surgical precision. He knows exactly which words activate guilt, ambition, or the need for approval. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, takes on a different meaning here because he realizes that most people believe they are making their own decisions when they are only responding to carefully constructed stimuli. Large political campaigns, social media algorithms, emotional advertising, and even cultural movements use exactly this logic. Machiavelli would understand this immediately. The problem is that living by manipulating perceptions exacts a heavy psychological price. The puppeteer begins to dissociate emotionally. He no longer knows when he is being genuine or strategic. Everything becomes a mechanism. Everything becomes a calculation. He gains influence but loses spontaneity. And deep down, he realizes something unsettling. Controlling people doesn't eliminate the inner void. It only masks him with a temporary sense of power. Above them all stands the architect. He is no longer concerned solely with winning individual battles. He thinks in terms of decades. While others discuss moves, he builds the entire chessboard. The architect creates systems, cultures, ideologies, companies, narratives, and environments that will continue to function even after his absence. He doesn't play the game, he builds the casino. His own loyal armies cease to be merely individuals and become entire structures functioning in favor of his vision. Steve Jobs shaped collective behavior through design and ecosystem. Rockefeller shaped markets. Machiavelli shaped entire generations of political thought centuries after his own death. The architect understands constant adaptability because he knows that empires crumble when they become too rigid. He doesn't cling to form, he clings to the objective. And yet there is one last level that almost no one reaches. A level where the individual realizes that even power, influence, and control can become sophisticated prisons of the ego. A rare state in which man no longer needs to prove anything to the world, precisely because he has finally understood something that few could bear to face. The seventh level is the most misunderstood of all because at first glance it seems like weakness. The average person looks at it and thinks they've lost ambition. But in reality, the opposite has happened. They've traversed so many layers of illusion that they no longer need them to exist. This is the level of emptiness. Without attachment, without a constant need for validation, without a desperate hunger for recognition, emptiness doesn't mean absence of power. It means absolute independence from it. And this is deeply frightening because most people have built their entire identity on approval, status, control, or fear of losing something. The man of emptiness has already faced these internal chains. He understands Machiavelli in a way that few understand. True power belongs to those who can act without being emotionally enslaved by the consequences. Better to be feared than loved loses importance here, because he no longer needs to mold his own essence to control perceptions. The appearance of virtue ceases to be a social strategy and becomes irrelevant. He doesn't compete for attention. He doesn't engage in unnecessary wars. He doesn't need to win every argument to sustain his ego. And that's precisely why their presence becomes almost impossible to manipulate, because whoever needs nothing becomes dangerously free. There's something curious about this stage. The less a person tries to control the world, the more influence they naturally exert over it. It seems contradictory, but that's precisely where virtu and fortuna meet in a deeper way. The man of emptiness is not apathetic. He simply no longer acts out of need. If he decides to build something, he builds it because it makes sense, not because he needs to prove his worth. If he enters a relationship, he enters it by conscious choice, not out of fear of loneliness. If he leaves an environment, he leaves without begging for acceptance, and this completely changes the energy of his decisions. Imagine someone in an important negotiation. Most people negotiate with fear of losing. The man of emptiness negotiates knowing he can leave. And whoever can leave almost always possesses an invisible advantage. The calculated use of force here transforms into absolute self-control. He doesn't react impulsively to provocations because he doesn't need to defend a fragile persona. He doesn't despair in the face of temporary losses because he understands cycles. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, takes on a different meaning. The most difficult reality to master has always been one's own mind. And few can bear to face this without escaping into distractions. But there's a silent irony in this whole hierarchy. Most people believe that leveling up means accumulating more things, more money, more influence, more titles, more control. But each true level demands just the opposite, abandoning some illusion that seemed indispensable. The sleeper needs to abandon passivity. The imitator needs to abandon the need to appear intelligent. The fox needs to abandon excessive paranoia. The lion needs to abandon dependence on its own strength. The puppeteer needs to abandon the addiction to controlling everything. The architect needs to abandon attachment to its own creation. And the void man abandons even the need to be someone special. That's where almost no one can continue, because real human nature prefers psychological comfort to profound transformation. And perhaps that's why the entire system was designed in such a specific way. Not to awaken sovereign individuals, but to keep the majority too busy to realize which level they're still stuck on. Almost everyone wants to level up in life, but few accept the psychological price of real transformation. Because true evolution doesn't happen by adding things, it happens by removing illusions, and that hurts. The sleeper, for example, only wakes up when he realizes he spent years living on autopilot, obeying routines he never consciously chose. This shock usually comes at uncomfortable times, an unexpected dismissal, a betrayal, a financial crisis, a silent burnout. Suddenly, the person realizes they've built their entire identity on fragile external structures. Machiavelli perfectly understood this logic when he spoke about constant adaptability. Those who depend too much on external stability inevitably become vulnerable. That's why the first leap requires abandoning the illusion of absolute security. And few people can do that without emotional resistance. It's more comfortable to believe that someone is in control of the world. But real intelligence is born when the individual accepts radical responsibility for their own trajectory. A practical example of this appears when someone decides to stop depending exclusively on a fixed salary and begins to develop parallel skills: sales, editing, programming, negotiation, content creation, or investments. At first, it seems unstable. Then they realize that freedom almost always begins by seeming like a risk. And that's precisely where many people back down before the real transformation begins. The leap from imitator to fox is even more uncomfortable because it requires abandoning the need for social approval. This is perhaps one of the most powerful emotional vices of human nature. A person spends years trying to appear intelligent, correct, admirable, or virtuous because they have been trained since childhood to associate acceptance with emotional survival. But the real world rarely rewards only good intentions. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, means understanding human incentives without romanticizing them. The individual begins to realize that silent competence is worth more than aesthetic performance. So they stop studying just to appear cultured and start studying to increase their decision-making power. Instead of consuming random knowledge, they begin to focus on leverage skills: persuasive communication, behavioral reading, finance, strategic networking, emotional management, and reputation building. Books like The 48 Laws of Power, The Prince, Financial Psychology, or The Art of War cease to be intellectual entertainment and become practical tools for understanding the world. Better to be feared than loved stops sounding cruel and begins to mean something deeper: being respected for one's own consistency. And when that happens, the person begins to notice something strange. The less they crave validation, the more influence they naturally acquire. But the highest levels demand abandoning even more dangerous illusions: control and identity. The lion needs to accept that he cannot carry everything alone. The puppeteer needs to realize that manipulating people does not fill an inner void. The architect needs to understand that even great empires can become prisons of the ego. And here is a detail that almost no one comments on. Many extremely successful men externally live emotionally imprisoned by their own creations. They need to maintain an image, a character, a pattern impossible to relax. Their own loyal armies can build power, but they can also turn someone into a hostage of their own structure. The man of emptiness crosses this barrier because he abandons the obsessive need to control external perception. This does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means acting without constant fear of losing identity. Imagine someone who can completely change careers at 40 without feeling socially dead. Or someone who can leave a toxic relationship without destroying their self-esteem. That is inner sovereignty. Virtù and fortuna finally balance when the individual understands that the greatest battlefield has never been the external world. It has always been their own mind. And while some are beginning to realize this, the entire system continues to function perfectly to prevent most from even having time to ask that question. Few people realize that the modern system wasn't created to awaken sovereign individuals. It was created to produce predictable social stability. And this completely changes how someone views school, university, career, and even entertainment. From an early age, the sleepyhead learns that obedience is worth more than questioning. The child who follows instructions without causing discomfort receives praise. The one who challenges norms is usually treated as a problem. Gradually, the mind learns something silent. Thinking for oneself can generate emotional punishment. Machiavelli would understand this immediately because he understood that power structures always seek to preserve continuity. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, reveals that systems need predictability to survive. And predictability is born from conditioned behavior. So school rewards memory over perception, repetition over creativity, conformity over intellectual independence. The individual learns complex mathematical formulas, but leaves without understanding taxes, investment, negotiation, influence, or wealth building. They learn historical dates, but don't learn real human nature. And while he believes he's being prepared for the world, he's actually being trained to function within it without causing dangerous disruptions. The most curious thing is that many people will defend this model tooth and nail, precisely because they never saw any other possibility. Then comes university, where the imitator finds the perfect environment to refine their own illusion of intelligence. Not because studying is bad. Studying remains one of the most powerful weapons that exist. The problem is when knowledge becomes a social symbol instead of a tool for autonomy. A person spends years accumulating certifications without realizing they remain emotionally dependent on institutional validation. And this creates a curious phenomenon. Individuals who are extremely technically prepared but psychologically fragile in the face of reality. The market changes, technology evolves, professions disappear, and many collapse because they built their entire identity on external stability. Constant adaptability ceases to be an advantage and becomes a survival necessity. Machiavelli spoke of virtù and fortuna, precisely because he understood that the world favors those who can adapt quickly to the changes in the game. A clear example of this happened with the internet. While some waited for formal authorization to start something, others learned editing, sales, programming, marketing, or content creation on their own, and built financial independence even before receiving a diploma. The traditional system called many of them reckless at first. Then it started inviting them to give lectures. And this pattern repeats itself in almost every important historical transformation. First, they ridicule. Then they resist. Then they imitate. Then comes the corporate career, where the calculator usually emerges. There, the individual finally realizes that competence isn't always the main factor for growth. Relationships, social perception, timing, influence, and political reading often weigh more than brute force. Better to be feared than loved takes on practical nuance here. The extremely competent employee, but incapable of setting limits, often becomes just the exploitable indispensable. On the other hand, the one who understands power dynamics learns to negotiate presence, reputation, and psychological scarcity. The calculated use of force appears in meetings, promotions, and silent power struggles. But there's a cruel trap at this stage. Many spend their entire lives playing corporate games without realizing they remain trapped on a board built by someone else. They trade time, mental energy, health, and freedom for status symbols they can barely enjoy. Their own loyal armies cease to exist because the entire structure belongs to the system, not the individual. And that's when some truly begin to awaken. They realize that freedom doesn't just come from earning more money, but from reducing invisible dependencies. They realize that true intelligence may never have been about climbing inside the machine, but about understanding how it works before it transforms one's own identity into disposable fuel. Now the question is no longer which of these levels seems interesting, but becomes much more uncomfortable. Which one are you actually living in today? Because it's easy to watch content about strategy, Machiavelli, power, or intelligence and remain exactly the same tomorrow. What's truly difficult is looking at your own life without emotional anesthesia. It's difficult to admit how many decisions are still guided by fear of rejection, need for approval, or attachment to security. Most people never achieve true freedom because they continue to negotiate their own minds for temporary comfort. And perhaps that's precisely what separates ordinary individuals from those who build inner sovereignty. The courage to abandon illusions that the rest of the crowd desperately protects. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, requires maturity to accept that the world rarely rewards prolonged innocence. It rewards perception, constant adaptability, emotional control, the ability to act even when no one believes in you, and above all, awareness of one's own human nature. So observe your own routine after this video. How many decisions are truly yours? How many thoughts came from you? And how many were installed by the environment? Are you building your own loyal armies or just strengthening structures that will never belong to you? Are you learning skills that increase your freedom or just accumulating sophisticated distractions? Because the man who understands virtù and fortuna stops waiting for perfect moments. He begins to build advantage silently while the rest still seek social validation. And perhaps the most dangerous thing of all is realizing that the system never needed physical chains to keep people imprisoned. It was enough to create enough fear for them to build their own mental prisons. Better to be feared than loved may sound harsh at first, but there is something even harsher, spending your entire life being easily replaceable because you never developed presence, strategy, or real autonomy. Now I want to know from you, which of these levels described your life most accurately? Which illusion is still holding you back today? Security, approval, control, identity? Write in the comments, because sometimes admitting the truth is the first step to getting out of autopilot. And if this video changed your worldview, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because from now on, you'll start to see power games, human behavior, and invisible strategies that most people go through their whole lives without realizing it.